Kalimera, Aegean 600 race fans. I'm Dobbs Davis. We're here at the last day of the event, and opening the tracker, we can see that, lo and behold, there are no boats on the race course. The last boat to finish did so at about 3 o'clock this morning, and I found out in going through the results, the reason for them to stick it out that long was, it turns out they got second place in their class, so there's some rewards for perseverance. In any case, what I'd like to do with this final show is give everybody an overview of how this race went from beginning to end, and along with a few comments. So thanks for tuning in. This is showing the current situation. Now the clever weather overlays on this comes from this toggle up here. I've used it several times in other shows. This shows the current conditions, and then this scroll bar can show you what the forecast is in future conditions. But there's nothing for us, unfortunately, to look backwards and see what the weather was actually, and so therefore you're going to have to believe my memory on what we saw in the last several days of this race. Now, if we scroll backwards, we can see the fleet assembled up here off of Cape Saunio. This was just a little after the start at 2 o'clock on Sunday, local time. We had a strong Meltemi in those on that day and into that night. I'm going to see if I can scroll. Yeah, there we go. Zoom in a little bit more. It started in brisk 15, 25 knot conditions, perfect reaching conditions. The teams went upwind, went around a mark at Cape Saunio, and then reached off at high speed for their first mark on the course down here at the island of Milos. Leading the pack were these two Mod 70s, Argo and Zulu. They led, as you can imagine, the entire race, very high speeds. That first leg, they were going 25 to 30 knots in boat speed, just extraordinary, and certainly suggestive of record-winning pace. So going forward, you can see the group is following fast, and a couple of jibes in here. So the breeze did back around a little bit for this to be more of a downwind leg for some and a high-speed reach leg for others. The fastest boats with the apparent wind dragged forward are always going to sail at slightly higher angles, and the first two monohulls here getting around already well behind the first two multi-hulls. Now the next leg of the course is down here within the caldera at Santorini. Everybody has to go through this amazing place. It's a caldera, and they go through the middle of this, and so it's quite a unique feature of this race and this race course. These guys went through in the evening, as did the first monohulls. That was what does that say? 10:30 at night for the monohulls, soon to be followed by the fastest of the monohulls. A couple of multi-hulls back here, Picamol, and they so you can see by the straight lines, straight angles, this was a high-speed reaching leg. Same wind strength at that time, 15, 20 knots or so. Now comes the interesting part, because on this leg from Santorini down to Kassos, this is where this end of the race course typically gets very windy, and so when the Meltemi is filled in, it can be 15 to 25 up here, but down here at the edges of these islands, it can, in the gusts, it can be a 40, I've heard 50 knots going through the channel of these islands. They focus that wind, probably some of that's geographic. So from the east edge of Crete across to Kassos, Karpathos, it's always windy down here. So for the Mod 70s, they would have been, very heavily reefed down. As they told me afterwards, we were focused on keeping the boats. The boats will normally go fast, so then it's just a matter of keeping the boats together and not breaking anything. The fastest monohulls, interestingly enough, had split a little bit here, lucky jibing away. So the breeze had shifted around more to the northwest. This became a downwind leg for them. And then now as the rest of the fleet comes down in this leg, they too throw in a few jibes. and I think it's probably right around here. We had a horrible accident happen with one of the teams who were up in this area. They'd gone through Santorini in the morning, and were probably in about 16, 18 knots of wind, and they just had a terrible accident where two crew were thrown overboard, wrestling with a spinnaker, and one of them was hit by the rudder and severely injured, and unfortunately succumbed to her injuries. So that was a terrible news for all of us, and we're just very, very sorry about that. That team limped on to, retired from the race, obviously, and limped on to be down in Cassos. I think the boat's still down there. But in any case, it wasn't very extreme conditions where they were, and it happened see, a little bit later. I thought it was 5:30 in the afternoon, so that's right about that time. And I think they were probably in around this pack. It wasn't really extreme conditions, but just an unfortunate accident that caused that. In the meantime, the leaders already by Monday afternoon, they're already well past the halfway point of the course up here at Rhodos. They're already, the Mod 70s are already tacking and zigzagging up in this eastern side of the course. They actually went through the lee here at Rhodos without stopping. There was light air for sure, but it wasn't a complete stop for them. Maybe the breeze was shifted around enough to being out of the due west rather than northwest. The lee was not as much as an issue. Here we can see, for example, Carbonita at this point in time was going 11.8 knots, close to that point of land there. Actually, this point of land here called Lindos. That's typically a tough place to get past for lack of wind, as we'll see in a moment. So these first group, they got away fast through the lees, and that breeze kind of held for them. It wasn't super windy here, but I was told that it was very irregular. So, you'd have 15, 20 knots, and then get in behind an island, it would drop to nothing, and then it would gust again to 30. So really a lot of changes. I was told by one team they reefed and unreefed the main 38 times, and that was amongst this first 10 boats or so. So quite a high emphasis on good teamwork and gear shifting. Now, this is where things. So these guys here, kind of the back of the front, they did okay. They too skated through the lee of roads without much of an issue to proceed up on the course. They were doing okay. Never stopped completely, I think. Whereas this next group, I would say the middle of the pack. This is let's see, where are we here? So this is early in the morning on Tuesday, and as you can see here, this is just a big parking lot, basically. They all stopped. Some were able to slide through along the shoreline, but everybody went way slow. Some stopped completely. I know this is a point of frustration and actually resulted in some boats retiring simply because they just felt like I think they got frustrated and just felt like they couldn't punch through this and get back to the finish line by the end of the week. I think they were that pessimistic about it. But this is again a regular feature of this course, and how everybody gets through that can be a make or break in the race. So by the 9th of July in the evening, so this is Tuesday evening, most everybody had gotten around, and now they're on the long leg here. I think the wind had shifted a bit, so this became more of a fetch than a beat. But with enough wind speed, they could make progress. Now again, not a lot of wind, but enough to keep going. So this is the key difference between the middle and back of the pack than what the leaders experienced. I'm going to scroll up here and show you something else. I should have to go back a little bit here. Now, the lead guys had their share of bad luck too. So mod 70s, this is early in the morning on, no, what is this? Yeah, this is early in the morning on Tuesday, so 2 o'clock in the morning. They're already ripping toward the finish line. They're well on record pace, and unless disaster happens, they're going to set the multi-hull record, which they did without an issue. I think they beat it by something like 7 hours. Lucky, who was a lead, this is ex-Rambler, it's a 1K88. They were on record pace for the monohull record at this stage. As you can see, 14.6 knots. Distance to the finish at that point, I think, was probably about 100 miles or so, 121 miles. And then what happened is they too get caught. So right about here, that's when they rammed into the lee of this island, and it was, I'm sure it must have been frustrating. They stopped and watched the closure here. Their trailing boat is L4, a Volvo 70, and they closed up quite a bit. Lucky managed to sort of wiggle away to the south and start going again, but this speed bump of a few hours is frankly what cost them the monohull record. L4 had stopped a little bit in here too. So these holes on the race course were, at this stage in the race, starting Tuesday into Wednesday and certainly yesterday, they were really all over. And not just to the lee of the islands, sometimes even to the windward side of the islands. So this second half of the race became one of keeping the boat moving. Everybody over on this side of the course was also struggling because the Meltemi was not at the same strength that it was over on the west side of the course. Big patches of light air in here. Again, a lot of teams were, those that were good at keeping the boat moving, so even like Black Pearl was one of the fastest monohulls, 0.7 knots at this stage, but they kept that boat moving best they could. 56-foot all-carbon boat, pro crew, really great team, and you can see how they extended away in that portion of the race, even after a few squiggles, meaning they must have had some light air there, that they were able to stretch out beyond their immediate rivals astern of them. You can see these wiggles in the tracks mean either, a big header and attack, or sometimes just having hit a patch of light air. Continuing on, the majority of the pack now well into, this is the 10th of July, so this is a Wednesday morning. Fairly straight lines and some decent speeds, some not decent speeds. 4 knots there, 0.7 knots. Some of the others, on the other hand, not very far away, going 6 knots. So it's up and down all the time. There was not one geographic feature to connect the dots to. It was really all over and required patience and perseverance for everyone. This is when you start to see a lot of boats in gray bailing out of the race. They're headed back. They probably decided they'd be on holiday now, pull into a lee of an island and rest and take it easy for a bit on their way back to Olympic Marine, back up here. But those that stuck it out, they eventually, I think, were worth it. So by the time you got to Thursday morning, Thursday evening, then things started to straighten out. The Meltemi started to filling in from the west to the east, and nice straight lines and good speeds for these boats as they were approaching this second gate over here at Mykonos. Still a few others out here, struggling to get past, but their reward would come later when they stuck it out. So, and this was night before last. Good speeds, or this is Thursday afternoon. So everybody going along pretty well. Nice straight lines, some good speeds, and I'm sure everybody looking forward to having those conditions, maintain them all the way to the finish. So I think probably worth pointing out one other, let's see, So these guys here, Asante, this is a Bavaria 36. It's definitely a cruising boat. They are the last finishers in this race. They finished at 3 o'clock this morning. And yet, for sticking it out as they have, they actually got second place in their ORC 3 class for their perseverance. So again, hats off to them for sticking with it. That was them, and they, again, it's a bit of a seesaw. They go 7 knots and then stop and go 7 knots again, and back and forth throughout. This is actually last evening, 9 o'clock. So this is again a tremendous effort on their part and others. The only remaining double-handed entry in the event was the team on Ether, Evie and Jerry, and they too on a Daler 30, so smallest boat in the fleet. I have to find where they are out here. They're, I think, somewhere in this area. They maybe here. Sunfast. That's a yeah. Anyway, they're out here and they did a nice job. They stuck with it, and they were the only double-handed entry to finish, so they won the crown for that. And hats off to them. They're actually going to be on their way to the World Sailing Offshore Double-Handed World Championship in September in France. So in summary, this was a great race, very difficult in a lot of places. One terrible tragedy, and everybody will be in remembrance of that at our award ceremony tonight. But I hope everybody who's been watching these shows have gotten some entertainment and some knowledge out of it. I know one team in particular has done this race 3 times. They said that every time they do it, they learn more and more, and it really helps them. So yeah, going to school on these even gives some competitors some homework to do before the next one. So thanks again for tuning in. For the AEGEAN 600 and Seahorse Magazine, I'm Dobbs Davis.